All right, we're getting into this gravity stuff. Awkward intro that sort of I forgot to do beforehand. So far, all we've done is make a new variable called y velocity. We made it for this sprite only, and notice that its name is now physics sprite y velocity. That's what you see there. So you can make a y velocity for other things, and then if you made a y velocity for your bullet or your axe that you throw or whatever this character is going to be throwing, then it could be like axe y velocity and enemy y velocity and so on. So we'll make y velocities for this sprite only was the important thing to know. All right, there we go. So that's the intro. So now we're going to take a look at how we actually make this variable do something. I'm going to leave this little thing open here. It's not important to leave it there eventually, but while we're figuring things out, it'll be important to see it. So we'll keep it visible. So here we go. We are going to make a little gravity engine. I'm going to just shrink that down so we can have the code a little more visible. And we'll enlarge this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a forever loop. And this is going to be a loop that's constantly applying the y velocity variable to our character. So it's going to be a forever loop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a change y by y velocity. That's the gravity engine. That one little script. It's not going to make gravity automatically happen, but it's a great start. So how does this work? Well, think about if we press green flag right now, given that y velocity is 0, nothing will happen. I'm doing it right now. The script is running. Nothing happens because we're changing y by 0, and typically when you add 0 to something, nothing happens. But watch what happens if I were to manually set y velocity to, say, 1. Any guess what will happen? Yeah, it's going to go up. Up, 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 up. If I set it to -1, it's going to go down. And so this variable can control the movement of things. Also, if I want it to stop, I can set it to 0, and it will stop. So this y velocity variable can sort of control up, down, and stopping. And also, it doesn't always have to be the same number. If you think about how gravity works, you picture that typical platformer video game where the character jumps off the platform. It's got what's called a parabolic arc, right? It's sort of fast at the beginning, and then it kind of slows down, and then it starts coming down slowly, and then speeds up and gets really fast at the bottom of its jump. So that parabolic arc is actually really easy to simulate in Scratch. It's just a matter of changing y velocity. So when you first start jumping, it's going to be a big number, but then you constantly decrease it, and that's what's going to create the force that's going to pull you down. Always decreasing y velocity. So let's make that happen. I'm going to shrink this back down. Am I going? How am I doing for speed here? Is this a good pace? People doing okay out there? Yeah? Okay, great. Let me know if it's too fast or too slow. And if you have any questions, definitely just stop me. I would love to answer a question. I think I'll stick this set y velocity to 0 actually in here just to reset it. So if we start the game and y velocity was like -1,000 or something, and that'll happen from time to time, then it won't be such a problem. Okay, so now let's make the actual force of gravity act upon us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another little loop. I'm going to say, it's going to look kind of like this. I'm going to do something like this. It's not the permanent end point, but it's going to look a little bit like this. Forever, change y velocity by -1. And it doesn't have to be -1, by the way. It can be different numbers, but it does have to be negative. That's what's going to eventually make gravity point downwards. And if you make it positive, you can make gravity point upwards, which could be a fun thing you could put into your game, but I don't recommend it at the moment. So how this works is basically it's constantly making gravity decrease, so that's constantly going to act to make you accelerate downwards. And if there was ever a better definition of gravity than acceleration, well, down, I guess, is a relative term if we're looking at a cosmic level, but towards the Earth is what we're doing. So I'm going to put that in there, but then we also have to come to a rest at some point, right? Like we are technically, gravity is acting upon us, but we're not accelerating downwards for the most part. because there's a ground under our feet and there's a normal force and it's pushing against us and all this kind of stuff. So to simulate that, we're only going to make gravity pull us down if we're not touching the ground. How do we know if we're touching the ground? Thanks, Michelle.
And then you use like a sensing.
Yeah.
Color or
Exactly. So if we're touching the ground, y velocity should be 0. If we're not touching the ground, we should constantly be decreasing it. So that's actually going to be, just as you suggested, Michelle, an if statement. I'm going to make it an if-else, because there's 2 modes here. So I know I'm touching the ground because my ground is green. And you guys can make whatever color you want, but that's mine. So that's why my script is going to look this way. So I'm going to say if ever touching color green. Wow, I might actually have chosen the green as the default green of the touching block. Ooh. Achievement unlocked. So if I'm touching green, what do I want to do? I want to set y velocity to 0. That means I'm not moving, right? If I hit the ground, not moving. Else, if I'm not touching the ground, I want to start accelerating downwards. And I'm going to stick in change y velocity by -1. So that's the second script. This is sort of the actual power of gravity and the ground impact part of the code. And I should mention, just in case anyone is feeling a little tired today, note the difference between set and change. I have students sometimes forget that this is just supposed to be set, because you're doing and listening at the same time. It's hard, especially on a tired day. So yeah, if you put change y velocity by 0, nothing would happen, and your character would just continue to accelerate through platforms. Thanks for your question, Ryan.
Wouldn't you have to set the y velocity back to 0? Like, if you jump up, it starts changing.
Yeah, so there's still a missing part of the puzzle. Okay. So yeah, definitely more coming. Let's just see what we do have right now. I'm going to make this, I'm going to do something just for the purpose of this demonstration. I'm going to, inside of the physics sprite, I'm going to click can drag in player. And player means like in the screen where it just demonstrates your project. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but you can drag these around, no problem. But when you go to full screen mode, you can't, unless you check that box. So now I can click and drag this one. I can't drag anything else, though. So I'm going to press green flag and just kind of watch what happens. Green flag, here we go. Oh, that was a little excessive. I guess drag in player can be a problem. Maybe I'll just do it over here. So you can see that it has a nice drop, right? And it looks pretty realistic. Like it starts off slower and accelerates downwards. Does everyone see how that's working? And also notice the value of y velocity as things are falling. I'm going to click and drag it, and it starts off as 0, and then it increases. -1, -2, -3, -4. So as it's falling, it falls faster and faster, just like actual things in real life. Your velocity gets faster, your speed gets faster as you fall. There it is. Already we're seeing one of the problems with this, and that is your sprite will sometimes go through the platform. Like that one worked pretty good, right? Oh, landed pretty solidly, a little bit in. This one here, let's see. Oh man, I totally impaled the ground. Oh, brutal. Now this is going to be one of the problems we're going to have to live with this technique. And if you don't like this technique, I don't blame you. There is a much harder but perfect technique that I'll link to later on. But it's basically like this technique, which is just extra stuff. One way to mitigate this, however, is to do something a little bit different. Instead of saying, sorry, I'll zoom out. And this is what I did in my Overwatch game. And that is to not set y velocity to 0, but set it to 0.1. So I will slowly rise out of the ground if I impale the ground. That's why if you played that Overwatch game, you'll notice the characters kind of bounce. They're like constantly like vibrating on the ground as if they're like really like caffeinated. And it has its own sort of goofy look to it. So if I start it, you'll see that it's slightly kind of shaky, right? And that doesn't look professional. That's not how Mario looks. That's not how, Super Meat Boy looks. But it's a pretty good compromise in terms of we're making gravity happen in 2 scripts. So I think it's a worthwhile compromise. And you'll notice that as it falls, I should make this a little bit bigger. It penetrates through the platform, but then rises back up to the top again. Unfortunately, you still get that sort of vibration. So there you go. So take it or leave it. But I would say in terms of just learning how to make this happen, this is a great start. And that's all you're going to be responsible for the project. You can choose if you want to do a little bit more sophistication with it. If you want it to go up faster, you don't have to use 0.1. You can use 0.3, 0.5, like whatever number you want. And that would totally, make it vibrate faster, but also make it rise out of the ground faster. So find the sweet spot for your project you think is good. I think 0.3 is working out pretty well. I don't know what I use in my Overwatch game, but that's there, working out pretty well. Okay, so now we have to actually make it jump. It can fall, but not a lot of games are just about falling. Is that true? Is there any games about falling? Fallout, I guess. No, just kidding. I can't think of one. Maybe like Parachute Simulator or something. I guess that's a lot about falling. But we are going to want to make this character jump from platform to platform. So we'll add in the jumping code. And I guess we'll actually have to make some like moving left to right code as well. Because otherwise we can't really jump to a platform. We can just jump up. So let's talk about jumping. How do we make a character jump? I'm going to use when you press the space key. And then usually what would you do? You'd probably do something like change y, right? By a positive number to make it go up. No longer will we do this. Instead, we're going to set the y velocity variable. And I'll show you exactly all we're going to do is set y velocity to, I don't know, pick a number, 10. And I'll zoom in again so you can see. There you go. When I press space key, I set y velocity to 10. What's going to happen? Well, because of the gravity engine script, this script right here, this forever loop, I'll start changing y by 10. And because I'm no longer touching the ground anymore, I'm going to start decreasing that. So then it'll be 9, and then 8, and then 7. Those are still positive numbers, so I'll still be going up. But it'll be slower and slower. I'll be going up by less and less until I eventually get to 0. And that's when I'm going to peak at the top, and then the next time will be -1, and then -2, and then I'll start falling back down to the ground. And you can see, I hear lots of people pressing space bars. You also notice that I got kind of a bit of a Flappy Bird thing going on here. Hey, guess what? You just learned how the code of Flappy Bird works. Other than the rotation, that's exactly what's going on in Flappy Bird. You probably don't, well, you might want to do that in your platformer game, but you probably want to restrict it to not jumping in the air, or at most once, I think is the classic thing from games, usually. Also, you might want to... Easy on the keyboards, folks. These things are not free, right? Let's be gentle. So I was going to say, let's right now talk about how, like right now, this can't jump high enough to get on that platform. So that's not good. So how do we change how high it jumps? You might already have thought of that. Also, let's figure out... wait, what was the other thing? I've lost my train of thought. Well, we'll do the thing that I remembered, and then we'll see what I remember. Okay, so jumping higher. Well, guess what? You could just set y velocity to a bigger number. I could set it to 15, for example, and see how that looks. Oh, that's pretty good. Maybe I'll make it 16. Trial and error is your friend. Oh, yeah, then how do we make it so we can't jump in the air? Any ideas on that? It's a decision we have to make, right? When we jump, we have to decide, is it okay to jump or not? What do you think? Yeah, Ryan.
Put a weight in it, I guess.
Oh, interesting. I wasn't thinking of a weight. You might be able to do something with a weight. I was thinking of a different structure.
I was thinking repeat until, but I was like, wait.
Yeah, but you're not really repeating anything. So yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe a weight. What do you think, Sky? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. So if you want to make a decision, usually if is the fastest way to do it. You probably could figure it out because a weight has an if in it as well. Wait until type of thing. But yeah, I think the most straightforward way is an if statement. So you basically say, when I press space key, if I'm touching the ground, then jump. Like this set velocity to 16 is jumping, right? So if, I'll just steal this touching green. If I'm touching green, go ahead and jump. There is a bit of a danger of this because you're sort of vibrating on spot. So at some points you're not actually touching green. So occasionally it'll make it miss jump. But again, we're not implementing flawless gravity. We're implementing mostly, like 95% good gravity here. We'll refer to it as easy gravity, baby. But it's pretty good, right? The character is now jumping. I can't jump in the air. And we're getting that nice parabolic motion, right? That looks pretty authentic. That looks pretty much like Mario. And guess what? This is the code that is in all those classic platformer games. I mean, it's not programmed to scratch, I guess, obviously. I don't know if that's obvious or not. But that same idea about a variable being applied to their Y position and setting that variable to jump and changing that variable by a negative number to implement gravity. This is the code of platformer games, hands down. So I guess I should make it move. So just a second, I'll throw those scripts in. You probably know how to do that. I will just quickly add in those smooth motion scripts that you've seen before. I'll make it forever if pressing left and forever if pressing right. Feel free to choose, A and D and W for jump, whatever you like. I'll just use arrow keys. You choose what your controls are going to be. Whoops. So I'll do if pressing the left arrow. I'll change. This is just exactly how it used to be. Change X by a negative number. I'll do -5, I guess. And then I'll just duplicate the script to also do a right one. So if I press the right key, I will change X by a positive number. Now, you're going to see a new level of derpiness that will be unlocked. So it's true now that I can move around and jump, and I can move on the air. Look at that, I jump from platform to platform. Whoa, the dream is real, but, now that I can move under here, some of the ugly secrets of this are going to be real. Watch this jump. Bam. Oh, my head got stuck in the platform. I'm getting sucked through. The passing through solid matter is so hard on the atoms. I'm up. That's not how platform games work. Also, check this sweet jump out. Ready? Whoop. Oh, didn't quite get it. You can impale yourself on the edge. Oh. And if you didn't take my advice and you made this the cat sprite, you'll notice that you can land on, say, your whisker. As long as any particular pixel is touching green, you stop. That's one of the reasons why we're doing it as a box, because later on we'll have our character sprite fit in that box, and then collisions with whiskers and stuff won't be relevant. But the other problems are very, very relevant. So how do we make it so that we bounce off the bottom of a platform? That's going to be an interesting one. And how does it that we make it so we can't impale ourselves on the sides of platforms? Yeah, Michelle, what do you think?
You give it like a slightly different color.
Yeah, you got it. So this is, again, going to make some people kind of disappointed because you're like, oh man, that's not how Mario does it. That's not how Mega Man does it. Or whatever games. I don't know even what popular platformer games are these days, if there are any. What would be like was it The Binding of Isaac was pretty popular? I don't know, a few other. Obviously, I know nothing about modern platformer games. What's a modern platformer game? Educate me, folks. There's not any? What? Sorry? No? I don't. No? Well, okay. Well, there you go. It's a dying genre of games, but nonetheless, fun to program. So, so let's do it. So Michelle's suggestion was paint the bottom with a slightly different color so that when you impact, you can write some code to sort of reject yourself from the platform. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And you would want to do this for any platform that you could jump underneath. So here we go. I'm going to go edit my platform sprite. First, I'll actually call it platform. Call it platform 1. Maybe I'll have more than one platform. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to put a layer of color underneath. You don't have to make it a drastically different layer of color. You could just make it a slightly different shade of green. But just to illustrate it, I'm going to make mine pretty drastically different. Well, maybe not that drastic. I'll put dark green or something. Now, you have to make it fairly thick, because otherwise you could end up touching both the dark green and the ground green at the same time. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. So it's probably not thick enough. Maybe I'll just use rectangle. And I'll stick it at the bottom. I don't know what the exact thickness is, and it's going to depend on how strong your gravity or how strong your jump is and so on. So I'm not going to try and be scientific about it. I'll just use trial and error. And you can make yours less obvious. You can make different shades of green. So you probably don't need help drawing a dark green rectangle. You might need help with how do you actually make that work? So again, you can make another script that is going to check for touching that dark green color. If you touch that dark green color, you're going to stop. Or even better, like make it go down. So how do you make something stop or go down? What do you set? Y velocity. Yeah, you're going to set Y velocity. Can you imagine the script in your mind? If I touch the underside color, that's an if statement, right? That's a touching, sensing script. Then set Y velocity to some negative number or 0 at worst. I'm going to move this script, by the way. I'm just going to move my movement scripts together, my left, rights together, freeing up this forever loop for me to stick in my own if touching. You could probably stick this somewhere else as well. So if touching the underside color, then I'm going to, sorry, I should probably zoom in a bit better so people can see. I'm going to just make myself stop. So I'll set Y velocity to 0. Even better, I'm going to set it to -3 or something. So it looks like I'm kind of bouncing off of it. I'm not going to pause and then start descending. I'm going to hit it and go down right away. So here we go. Let's check it out. Does it work? Oh, yeah. Oh, it just barely works. works pretty good. Like I get rejected from the bottom of that pretty well. I can still jump up on the top, and then bam, I get my head hit against it. Okay, looks good, but I still have this problem. Boom. That's a little goofy. And if I get like right on the edge, I can go down now, and like, I don't know, there's all sorts of kind of weirdness. So same solution to make yourself bounce off the sides. So you just paint a different color on the side, and if you touch that, then you're going to get rejected. The left and right rejection won't have to do with the Y velocity, it'll have to do with your X position. So, you'll have to paint 2 different colors. One for the left and one for the right. Because if you hit the left side, it's got to push you to the right. And if you hit the right side, it's got to push you to the left. So we're going to do 2 different colors. Again, you can make them very subtly different so that you don't have to make your rainbow-colored platforms. But for me, I am not, so that this demonstration is fairly obvious. So I'm going to put them on. And there's a little bit of finesse here. You don't want to... I don't know quite how to scientifically describe this. You don't want to make it go all the way down because you still want the bottom to reject you vertically. So you kind of go there. But you don't want to go all the way up either because you don't want to like get launched off the side of the platform when you're going there. So I'm going to just leave a little bit of green on the top and put in my bouncing color. Ooh, I didn't quite get that. Sorry, I'll try again. And honestly, will this work perfectly? I don't know. I'd have to try it out a little bit more. I'd have to do a little bit more work to see if I had to modify this. So you might find that this bumper you're adding onto the side, you got to kind of play with before it works perfectly. So I'm just going to put it there, and if it works perfectly, I'll be surprised. And if it doesn't work, I'll just adjust it and redraw it slightly. So then I'll go over here to the other side. I'll put my right bumper. I'll make that tan color. I don't know how to describe that color. Puke brown? Puke yellow? As a parent of young children, I feel I am an authority on the color of puke. And I would say that that is definitely a valid color. Whoops, I started drawing by accident on the bottom. Okay, great. So there is my new platform, like really, really obvious. And sort of ruins the design if you wanted to have things on there. But that's okay. That's not a problem. You can do a much more subtle job of it when you create your platforms. Also, you can create overlays on top of things as well, so that it doesn't quite look so bad. You can have lots of fun with other things. But we'll just get the physics working. So now, if I want to make my character is rejected while I'm moving left or right, it's sort of like the Battle Arena game. That code is going to go right into our moving left and right. So you can check to see if you've touched, different colors as you're moving. So if I'm moving left, I have to check to see if I'm touching the the right side. So I'm moving right, I check to see if I'm touching the left side. So just go ahead and put in those if statements. If you're not sure, I'll code them up right now. An if statement here, an if statement there. This is moving to the left, so I'm going to check to see if I'm touching the right color. By the way, this is so useful if you don't know this. In the touching color block, if you click on the color, you get a little hand that will select the color. So I can just go over and click on the actual bumper that I drew and get that puke color. Pea soup green, maybe? I'm not sure. And then same thing with the other one. It just makes coding a lot faster. We'll get that brown. Sweet. And I'll just undo my movement. I'll probably do a little bit more than undo my movement, just to really make it obvious that I've been forced backwards. Maybe I'll change x by +7 or something, and in the other case, change it by -7. Okay, let's see. So now I try and jump through, and I can't quite get through. But I can get on top of the platform still. If I try to come down here, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And it's getting pretty good. Looks like I didn't have to make it quite as thick. I did exaggerate it quite a bit. So play with the thickness of things so you can sort of make them a little less obvious and a little less goofy looking. But I bet you could incorporate that into like the aesthetic of your project. So again, not perfect and not exactly beautiful, but beautiful enough and good enough for a mini project. So there's the aspects of gravity, and you know what? To make another platform, you can just duplicate this sprite. Platform 2. I can stick that over here. And now I can go from one platform to the next. And I can jump over here. And I can jump down there. And I can jump down here. So that's going to create sort of a reasonable gravity for today. I'm going to just pause this video, or stop it.